For 20 years as mistress of the noble household, I treated my mother-in-law as my own mother, attended to my husband's every need personally. I poured my heart and soul into raising my children. Yet all I received was this. A wife like you brings shame upon our family. Cast aside in a remote courtyard. I died alone. Given another chance, I'd choose a different path. Mother-in-law wants to become a nun? Fine. Husband wants to take a concubine? Go ahead. Son spends his days in debauchery? Let him. What they do is none of my business. Yet one by one, they all come begging me to manage them. I never imagined I'd die like this. The wind, lashing with snow, cut like knives into the house. The maid knelt on the floor, sobbing. Madam, they say there's no more coal. How could that be? The esteemed Marquis's residence. In the dead of winter, without stored coal? It could only be by someone's order. Food rations cut. Expenses curtailed. And now even the coal for warmth is denied. As for whose order it was, certainly not the mother-in-law who, when I married in, swore she'd treat me like her own daughter, nor the husband who, when he sought my hand, vowed lifelong devotion, never to forsake me. Or perhaps it was my own son, the child I bore for 10 months. Yet who calls another his mother? Another gust of wind swept in. I clutched my chest and coughed violently. But what came up was a mouthful of blood. Madam! Madam! I'll fetch a physician. It's unnecessary. On New Year's Eve, what physician would brave the snowstorm? To tend to a discarded wife of the Marquis's household? I had Hyundai move the reclining chair outside the courtyard. Soon, fireworks lit up the night sky. Just across the street, the Marquis's household welcomed a new bride and a new heir. This New Year's Eve was, naturally, extraordinarily lively. Only I, married into the Marquis's household for 20 years. I devoted myself entirely to the entire household. Yet I ended up unloved by my mother-in-law, unwanted by my husband, and despised by my son. Truly, how ironic. Madam? Madam? The sound of fireworks drowned out Hyundai's cries. I died on such a night of family joy. My husband embraced his new bride. My son set off fireworks. My mother-in-law sipped fresh tea. Not a single soul remembered the discarded wife who gave everything for them. Fortunately, heaven remembered me. I was reborn. Now, I grasped a teacup, poised to smash it onto Shinhuaiji. Chui miaoi. Don't push your luck. Is taking a secondary wife really worth such fury? I froze. The teacup clenched tightly in my hand. This was 6 years ago. Shinhuaiji had kept a mistress for 10 years, hiding it flawlessly. When I learned the truth, I fell gravely ill. Before I could recover, Shinhuaiji brought her openly into the manor. He declared he would take her as a secondary wife. Eiji and I had been childhood sweethearts, betrothed long ago. Had I not married you first, she would have been my primary wife. Now, as a secondary wife, she must still address you as elder sister. What more could you possibly want? After marrying him for over a decade, I never knew he had a childhood sweetheart already betrothed to him. In my past life, I hurled that teacup at him without hesitation. Shinhuaiji and I had a fierce argument, and I was so enraged I coughed up blood. That incident left me with lasting health issues. But now, as I clutched that teacup, my raised hand trembled slightly. Not a trace of anger remained. I had been reborn. Reborn at the very beginning of everything. Whether you agree or not, I must. Then marry her. I set the teacup down deliberately. Shinhuaiji froze. My husband disregarded Miss Du's status as a remarried woman, shrugged off societal scrutiny, and honored a betrothal made over a decade ago. Truly a man of deep affection and principle. I took a sip of tea, meeting his gaze with a gentle arch of my eyebrow. Then choose an auspicious day and welcome Miss Du into our home. Amidst Shinhuiji's stunned expression, I rose. Why should I refuse? The emotional wounds from my past life were one thing, but more than that, I was concerned for the face of the Marquis's household. She was indeed Shinhuiji's childhood sweetheart, and she had indeed been betrothed to Shinhuiji, but back then, she scorned the Marquis's household for its decline and broke off the engagement to marry the son of the Minister of Revenue. In less than 3 years, she was divorced on the grounds of neglecting her duty to her mother-in-law and uncles. Her birth family, ashamed of her, refused to take her back. Shinhuiji, however, did not disdain her. He promptly took her into his fold, but if this were made public, the Marquis's household taking a divorced woman as a secondary wife, and the divorced wife of a colleague, no less. How would the entire capital gossip about the Marquis's household, and how would Shinhuiji face Du Ji's former husband, now the prefect of Jingzhou, in the imperial court? All my concerns boiled down to 2 words in Shinhuiji's eyes: jealous. This lifetime, I'll let him have his way. What do the Marquis's reputation or Shinhuiji's official career matter to me? Pack some personal belongings to send to Miss Du. I instructed the maidservant. Inform the Marquis that once the date is set, simply announce it in the inner courtyard. Not only do I consent to Shinhuiji's marriage, I demand he celebrate it with great pomp and splendor. The Marquis is to take another wife. Within half a day, the news spread throughout the Marquis's residence. This time was different from my previous life. In my past existence, when I refused, the servants only knew of my fierce quarrel with Shinhuiji. They dared not gossip about anything else, but this time my personal maid respectfully delivered garments and jewelry. Before leaving, she declared in a voice loud enough for all to hear, "The lady requests that Miss Du settle comfortably within the Marquis's residence. Once the Marquis sets the wedding date, he will certainly bring Miss Du into the household in a grand 8-pole palanquin." Yunji reported back that Du Ji had been utterly stunned. "Lady, do you truly consent to that Du girl entering the household as a co-wife?" Yunji was Yun Dai's elder sister. In my previous life, she passed away even before me. Yet on her deathbed, she still remembered to bring her younger sister to the annex and care for me. I pressed a piece of osmanthus cake into her hand. 3 years in the annex, this was a rare treat. Before I could say another word, a commotion erupted outside. Young master, slow down. Be careful not to knock over the orchids." "Whoa. My dear son has arrived. Mother, are you truly so useless?" Shinhao kicked open my door. "You just let that woman walk right in? Is this how the mistress of the esteemed loyal courage Marquis manages the household?" I was holding a piece of osmanthus cake. "No need to put it down." I took a leisurely bite, gazing at him quietly. Shinhao is 14 this year. I married into the Marquis's household at 15 and bore him that very year. His birth was difficult. 3 days and nights passed, and I nearly died on the delivery bed. Yet over the years, our bond has never been particularly close. First, after his birth, my mother-in-law said I needed quiet recuperation and took him away. He was gone for 6 or 7 years. When I finally got him back, his eyes were fixed only on her. Second, I later discovered the truth. My mother-in-law maintained a facade of harmony. Yet behind closed doors, she schemed relentlessly to sow discord. She insisted he study diligently, only to preserve my reputation. She forbade him from associating with the idle nobles, driven by resentment that his birth had tormented me for 3 days. She could not bear to see him happy. Even forbidding him from visiting pleasure quarters stemmed from her fear that he might learn the ways of men and women. She dreaded him marrying early and snatching away my authority over the household. Shinhao had long since grown crooked. I once carried guilt in my heart. I blamed my own cowardice and naivety back then, for failing to keep him close and raise him myself. I tried desperately to make amends. Only after 3 years in the annex did I finally understand. Not all mother-son bonds are bound by blood. Was I wrong? Shinhao stiffened his neck. Usually, when he flew into such a rage, I'd rush over immediately, pouring tea, patting his back, urging him to speak calmly. But today, I merely averted my eyes. I poured myself a cup of tea. "Mother!" Shinhao's tone unexpectedly softened. That woman might be acceptable as a concubine. But how could she be a wife? Marrying a divorced woman as my wife? Wouldn't I be laughed to death at the Imperial Academy? And besides, others would mock you too, saying you failed to govern your household properly. Is that so? In my past life, he sided with his mother-in-law, saying I couldn't even tolerate a weak woman. They called me a jealous woman. I don't care. I won't let that woman enter this house. If you do, I'll disown you as my mother. I smiled. However, I looked at him. It is your father who seeks a wife, not me. Shinhao stormed out in fury. Before leaving, he shouted, "It's all because you couldn't keep father's heart." Yunji hurried to comfort me. Young master is still young. Madam, please don't be upset. I shook my head. He isn't young. He's just accustomed to it. All these years, every fault has been mine. When my mother-in-law fell ill, it was my failure to care for her properly. When my husband was overwhelmed with official duties, it was my inability to share his burdens. Even when a kitten or puppy went missing in the household, it was my incompetence in managing the household. Madam, this is a serious matter. Should we inform the old lady? I pressed another osmanthus cake into Yunji's hands. Inform her of what? Wasn't Shinhao the one she instigated? Who in the entire home mansion, aside from the deluded Shinhuaiji, didn't know marrying Du Ji would invite ridicule? Last lifetime, I was the one who stepped forward. Then my mother-in-law sided with Shinhuaiji, joining him in accusing me of jealousy. But this time, I gladly agreed. She values her reputation above all else. She couldn't stand idly by. Yet she wouldn't want to tear apart her own son. So she sent Shinhao to cause trouble for me. Let him cause trouble, even if he causes an uproar. I won't utter another word about this matter. Come evening, someone arrived at the West Wing. The moment they saw me, they anxiously reported, "Madam, the old lady has packed her belongings and says she's going to become a nun." Very well. That trick again. It was always like this back then. My mother-in-law always wore a smile and spoke the sweetest words. But the moment things didn't go her way, she'd wipe away tears. I'm old and useless now. This home mansion is a chaotic mess, better not to see it. I seek peace and quiet. So I'll enter the monastery. From childhood, I was steeped in the teachings of a woman's duty. At home, obey your father. After marriage, obey your husband. Honor your parents above. Teach your children below. This is how a woman should be. How could I drive my mother-in-law to take vows? That would be disobedience and disrespect. Whenever my mother-in-law put on such a show, I'd rush over to apologize and beg forgiveness. But now, Yunji, I'll call for help. The old lady wants to enter a convent. Hurry! Prepare extra clothes and silver to send to her. Order the steward to get the carriage ready at once. We must leave while it's still light. If we delay, the convent gates will close. The Zhongyu Marquis' residence was thrown into utter chaos. First, the Marquis was to take a new bride. Now, the old lady sought to enter a convent. And the Marquis' wife, who always held the reins and steadied hearts, remained utterly silent on the matter. When servants inquired, she only replied, "All is as the Marquis wishes. All is as the old lady wishes." Yunji touched my forehead several times. She worried I'd lost my mind from my recent illness. I told her to fetch wine. Sipping wine while admiring the snow, nothing could be more delightful. After all, this charade would play out for some time yet. How could my mother-in-law truly enter a convent? It wasn't until my last drop of blood was drained in my previous life that I understood. The accounts she entrusted to me back then were merely a fraction of the Marquis' estate. She held on to the wealth. Her son, and her grandson, never once considering relinquishing control. Her so-called entrustment of household management was merely a ruse under the guise of the marquisate's decline, biding her time for me to replenish the estate's expenditures with my dowry. How could Shin Huiji ever concede so easily? These past years, he's risen through the ranks with unstoppable momentum, brimming with ambition and triumph. And that Miss Du possesses extraordinary cunning. In Shin Huiji's words from my past life, she is the moon in the heavens, the snow upon the clouds. How could she be compared to a mundane woman like you? You want me to make her a concubine? I say you're dreaming. Sure enough, on her way out of the capital, my mother-in-law was forced back to the mansion by Shin Hao's wailing and lamentations. 3 days later, Shin Huiji sent in the chosen date written on a red slip of paper. Urgent, the 18th of next month. 3 days later, the mother-in-law could no longer contain herself. She led the second and third branches of the family, uncles, aunts, younger brothers' wives, younger sisters' wives, in a grand procession that filled my courtyard. Today is the 15th. In the past, on the 15th of every month, I would gather all the family branches to dine together and admire the moon. Within and without the Marquis's residence, no one failed to praise my virtue. Yet they also taught me, one should never live solely for others' approval. This time, as everyone stared at the solitary cup of clear tea before them, they exchanged bewildered glances. Shui Miaoi, is resorting to such vulgar tactics all you're capable of? Oh, Shin Huiji was present too. He believed I deliberately provoked my mother-in-law into contemplating monastic life, then summoned the entire household only to offer a single cup of tea, all silent protest. Grandmother, a mere meal? Does our Marquis's residence lack provisions? I'll have Auntie Li send some immediately, Shin Hao said, shooting me a fierce glare. I tugged at the corners of my lips, lowering my eyes. I sipped my tea. Madam Cui, if you've suffered any injustice or have grievances, speak plainly. The matriarch sat in the seat of honor, her face radiating benevolence as she spoke. I finally understood. I'd thought she'd gathered everyone to collectively persuade Shin Huiji. After all, in my previous life, after several heated arguments between us, he'd come to his senses. He'd sent Du Ji away from the estate. Only when he'd reached the pinnacle of his career, with no one daring to gossip about him anymore, did he truly marry her. But no, she merely gathered them to attack me. Indeed, Mother is ever the voice of reason. She'll surely champion my sister-in-law's cause. It's the second wife's younger sister-in-law. TSK. Everyone raves about the Cui family's virtuous daughters. But in my opinion, they're nothing special. Third uncle from the third branch. It seems Lord Cui has been dead for years. He's likely forgotten his dying words. My father charged you all to care for me before he died. Yet no one seems to remember that either. Aunt, as the mistress of this Marquis's household, you cannot simply stand by and do nothing. Is that so? When they locked me away in the side courtyard, not a soul mentioned I was the mistress of this house. Those playing the good cop and the bad cop took turns speaking. They practically wanted to drown me in their spit. I said not a word. All I could think was to tell Yinji, next time anyone comes, don't even offer them tea. Cui, sure. The matriarch slammed her hand on the table. What on earth do you think you're doing? Oh, she's losing her temper? I continued sipping my tea. Disrespecting elders. Acting so insolent, is that how a mistress should behave? I couldn't be bothered to lift my eyelids. Cui Miaoi. You must be thinking. What do you want? A divorce? You've hit the nail on the head. The teacup clattered onto the tabletop. I lifted my head and rose to my feet. Mother speaks with perfect reason. Miaoi shows no respect for elders and behaves with contempt. She fails to honor her mother above and neglects to teach her children below. She is incapable of managing the affairs of the Marquis's household. Grant me a letter of divorce. And let Miaoi depart. I curtsied. Then before anyone could react, called Yoonji. I'd prepared for this days ago. All these years, everyone saw the Marquis's household prospering, unaware of the effort I poured into it. The coming years were crucial for Shinhui's official career. Describing it as money flowing like water was no exaggeration. In my previous life, I nearly depleted my entire dowry just to keep up. This time, whoever wants to manage the household finances can take charge. Before everyone, I handed all the account books to my mother-in-law. I summoned the steward and returned every key to the storehouses. All the land deeds, property contracts, and shop leases I'd held over the years were also inventoried. With one final curtsy, Miaoi possesses neither the capability nor the fortune to manage the Marquis's household. With the Marquis taking a new bride, Mother will surely find a worthy match. The Marquis and I shall part amicably, each finding new happiness. The vast courtyard fell silent. After a moment, a sharp crack. Shinhuaiji smashed the teacup in his hand. Those who had come to interrogate me slunk away sheepishly. Shinhuaiji stayed behind, unleashing a torrent of anger. He likely intended to quarrel with me, but I had no desire to argue. For those unworthy, even a single glance is a waste of one's life. Don't think threatening me with divorce will make me yield. This Marquis Dushi must marry you. I shrugged. Marry me. Then, after over a decade as husband and wife, you want a divorce? Dream on. I pursed my lips. Then we won't divorce. You. Shinhuaiji was so furious his hands trembled. Finally, he flung his sleeves and stormed out. He nearly kicked the door off its hinges as he left. Madam. Yoonji approached again, her concern evident. I leisurely poured myself a cup of tea. Divorce? It's never that simple. My parents passed away early, leaving me without any connections in the capital. The divorce papers require both Shinhuaiji and his mother's signatures. But Shinhuaiji was just appointed as Assistant Minister of Works this year. If he were merely marrying Duji, he could still gloss over it by citing childhood affection. But if he divorces me to marry Duji, he'll be reported to the authorities for sure. And my mother-in-law? She's been eyeing my dowry since I entered the household. My father was merely the prince tutor without much background. But my mother, she was famously the daughter of the wealthiest man in Jiangnan. When I married, my wedding procession stretched for miles, causing a sensation in the capital. If we divorce, wouldn't I take those dowry items already in the Marquis's household? This public confrontation was meant solely to decisively wrest control of the household. Yet unexpectedly, it brought an unanticipated windfall. My mother-in-law actually agreed to let Duji enter the household. I heard that upon returning that day. She raged in her chambers. Who does she think she is? Does she believe our loyal and valiant Marquis can't manage without her? The very next day, she relented to Shinhuaiji. I understand my mother-in-law. She likely shares Shinhuaiji's view, that my public demand for divorce was a ploy to blackmail them. She decided to play it straight, hoping to force my apology. Alas, her scheme backfired. Nanny Lee came every few days to report on the wedding preparations. I ignored her. Shin Hao came every other day to cause a scene. I couldn't care less. On the wedding day, my mother-in-law's face was as dark as storm clouds. To make matters worse, some servant had made a blunder and sent the invitation to Duxi's ex-husband. That ex-husband was quite the character. He actually showed up. The scene turned utterly awkward. The day after the wedding, my mother-in-law, as if in a huff, handed over all the ledgers, land deeds, and other documents to Duxi right in front of me. Fine by me. No more using my dowry to subsidize this family of ingrate wolves. Just like in my past life, Duxi was delicate and sweet-tongued. Within days, she had coaxed my mother-in-law into beaming with joy. Shinhao also grew quite fond of her. After all, she never nagged him to study or questioned his late nights. Soon, my courtyard was nearly forgotten. Shen Huaiji was busy enjoying the honeymoon phase with his new wife. Shinhao was busy indulging in the city's pleasures. My mother-in-law was busy bonding with her new daughter-in-law as if they were mother and daughter. And me? When night fell, I changed into different clothes. I slipped out of the Marquis's residence through a hidden side door. My mother-in-law had always looked down on me. In her eyes, even though no one from the Marquis's household had held court office for 3 generations, it was still a distinguished family of scholars and officials. Though my father was the grand tutor to the crown prince, he possessed only the integrity of a scholar, yet he married a merchant's daughter. That I, bearing the blood of a merchant's daughter, could enter her Marquis's household was something to be grateful for. Yet it was precisely this merchant blood in my veins that allowed me to expand the Marquisite's meager holdings into something substantial. That small door had been deliberately left open, previously. I feared she would despise the taint of commerce on me. Yet some matters demanded I handle them personally. Unbeknownst to her, it became my gateway to freedom. You are the eldest princess. Seated above, wore a look of astonishment. The Marquis of Loyalty and Valor's wife? I shook my head. Your Highness, this humble maiden is Cui Miaoi, daughter of Cui Ku, former grand tutor to the crown prince. I am not merely skilled in commerce. My father was the revered grand tutor to the crown prince. From childhood, I studied widely with him, composing poetry at 3 and writing essays at 7. At 10, my essay ode to the South circulated widely throughout the capital. Yet my father insisted my feminine nature made such prominence inappropriate. He concealed my name, attributing it to a student of his in the South. I harbored resentment. I once vowed boldly, this life shall not yield to any man. Yet after marriage, I had no choice but to put away my books and tie up my hair. Managing household finances, serving my in-laws. I raised children and served my husband. 20 years in the Marquis's household passed. And looking back, I no longer remember my former self. This lifetime, I will reclaim who I am. The eldest princess had long championed women's education, eagerly seeking talent, while the Marquis's household was preoccupied with finding a new bride. I anonymously wrote her 3 letters. As expected, she requested to meet me. After our meeting, she showed no hesitation about my identity, but rather great delight. The Marquise's reputation for virtue spread far and wide, a paragon among noble wives. Who would have thought she possessed such literary talent and such audacity? To meet her need, I adopted the pseudonym Master Hung, frequenting the capital's tea houses. Within a month, news of the renowned female scholar, erudite and well-versed in ancient and modern affairs, spread throughout the city. Each day I slipped through the back gate, changing clothes, veiling my face, altering my voice upon exiting. And yet, I was never once recognized. 3 months later, the Marquis's wife remained neglected within the mansion. Meanwhile, Master Hung on Chang'an Street was in high demand. Another 3 months passed when the princess spoke to me. Miaoi, the path ahead may prove difficult with your current status. Would you require my assistance in securing a divorce? I curtsied, a trivial family matter, I dare not trouble your highness. Your highness, please grant me 1 more month. In truth, my chance came in less than half a month. After over half a year in the Marquis's household, Dushi was pregnant again. Yes, again. She had been with Shen Huaiji for 10 years, bearing him 3 children. Yet each time, she sent them away with a bowl of abortion potion. As Shen Huaiji put it, she was resolute and cold-hearted. She would rather die than accept her child as the illegitimate offspring of a mistress. After all, she was a proper noblewoman. Unlike you. Unlike me, whose mother was a merchant's daughter. Only then did I realize my husband, like my mother-in-law, had always looked down on me. After giving birth to Shinhao, I bore no more children. The main branch of the Marquis' household was thin on descendants. When Duji became pregnant, the entire household rejoiced. Until one day, Duji drank a cup of tea from my quarters. Upon returning home, she suffered lower abdominal pain and quickly began bleeding. My courtyard was once again filled to overflowing with people. Madame Cui, who would have thought you could be so cruel? Led by my mother-in-law, she slammed the teacup, still bearing traces of poison, onto the table. For 14 years since your marriage, this whole household has remembered your diligent, dutiful service and granted you countless chances. These past 6 months, you've shunned my western chambers, neglected your husband, abandoned household duties, even forsaken little Hao. All that could be forgiven. Today, you've even brought yourself to harm an unborn child. I did not yield the seat of honor to my mother-in-law, instead scanning the room. So, what do you propose? My mother-in-law waved her hand. Huaiji, draft the divorce papers. Just as expected. I smiled. Someone promptly handed paper and brush to Shen Huaiji. Shen Huaiji fixed me with a deep gaze. Meowie. You've pushed me too far. Don't blame me. He lifted his brush, poised to write. Husband, you're acting too hastily. I rose to my feet. Yunji immediately knelt. Grandmother, Marquis. Before Lady Du arrived this morning, the young master came here. Not only Lady Du's teacup, but every teapot in Chinny Garden has been laced with poison. Please, grandmother and Marquis, verify this. Yunji presented several teapots. Then another servant knelt. These medicinal packets were just found in the young master's quarters. Please inspect them, Madame Dowager and Marquis. No sooner had he spoken than a servant accompanied by a physician entered the courtyard. Bowing. This man claims he sold the young master the medicine. Please question him. Madame Dowager and Marquis. Shinhao immediately knelt on the ground, his legs trembling. I turned and walked out. Later, the princess asked how I could have calculated it so precisely. Not only did I know Duji would use Shinhao to frame me, but I even knew what kind of poison he used. And where he bought it. There was no other reason. I had experienced it once before. In my previous life. It was exactly the same. Not long after Duji entered the household, he won over everyone's hearts. He used my pregnancy as his opportunity to strike. How could I have ever imagined back then, carrying him for 10 months, watching my son grow up, that he would conspire with outsiders to destroy me? My mother-in-law declared before everyone, a wife like you brings shame upon our family. Shenhuai's divorce decree read, a wife like you brings shame upon our family. Shinhao personally confined me to the guest quarters, a wife like you brings shame upon our family. One by one, their words dragged me into the mud. I never rose again. I headed straight for the magistrate's office. By the time they realized and gave chase, I had already struck the drum at the courthouse gate. Cui Miaoi. Have you lost your mind? Shin Huiji grabbed my hand. What are you doing? Reporting to the authorities. I gritted my teeth. Framing my birth mother, unfilial, unkind, unjust. According to the law. He's your son. When has he ever treated me like a mother? I made to strike the drum again. Cui Miaoi. Shin Huiji gritted his teeth. What exactly do you want? The commotion before the magistrate's office had drawn a crowd of onlookers. The people following Shin Huiji had also caught up. The 2 drum beats drew 2 constables out to investigate. I gripped the drumstick tightly, straightened my back, and declared loudly, since your lordship has found new love, why not part ways amicably? I demand a divorce. For a moment, no one paid attention to the child in Duji's womb. After all, The person before them mattered more than the unformed life within her. Mother-in-law guarded Shinhao like the apple of her eye. Hearing I intended to report him to the authorities nearly knocked her off her feet. But she dared not gamble. She had gambled once when Duji entered the household. She lost. Another loss now would cost not just the Marquis's household its face, but its very future. I settled accounts with her, demanding back every last coin of the dowry I'd subsidized into the Marquis's household over the years. Shen Huaiji, hearing me speak only of silver, looked at me with utter contempt. He flung down the divorce papers and left. Du Ji, however, came to see me off personally on the day I left the estate. Perhaps my half-year of seclusion and detachment from worldly strife made her feel I posed less of a threat to her now. She wasn't as ruthless with herself as she had been in her previous life. The child was saved. As she saw me off, her belly still too small to show, she wore a smile. Sister, leaving like this. Your little sister truly can't bear it. You're just a woman, and Howard isn't by your side. If you ever face hardship in the future, remember to return to the Marquis's residence. She probably believed that with me gone, only good days awaited her. I smiled back at her. Sister, you must also remain devoted to the Marquis, bound in love forever. Never, ever abandon each other when calamity strikes. I began serving the princess openly. Master Heng had already established roots in the capital, and I resumed my studies in rhetoric. As more and more scholars and talented youths joined, Master Heng's name became known to nearly everyone. Seizing the momentum, the princess appealed to His Majesty. If Master Heng can achieve such scholarly distinction, why can't other women throughout the realm? Your Majesty, I plead on behalf of all women, I beseech Father to establish schools for them, to permit women to study. Whenever conservative factions in court opposed her, she retorted with a single phrase. Women incapable of great deeds? Why not debate the matter with Master Heng? Win that argument first, then speak. Driven by the princess's relentless advocacy, within a year, the capital's first academy for women was established. That year, I was immersed in lectures and scholarly debates, buried in books to the point of neglecting everything else. I had no time to pay attention to the outside world. Yet, undisturbed, certain events unfolded quietly. First, Duji's child was born. A young master. The Marquis's household rejoiced, hosting grand banquets. Second, Shinhao was due for marriage arrangements. Yet his reputation had soured over the past 2 years, spent cavorting with a group of dissolute young nobles. The wet nurse who raised him came to see me twice, pleading for me to rein him in, at least until his betrothal was settled. I paid her no mind. As winter approached, another scandal erupted in the Marquis's household, becoming the talk of the town. Shinhao, accompanied by several nephews from different branches of the family, caused a major disturbance at the ancestral hall. The cause was Duji's decision to have the stipends for each branch, reduce the household staff, and cut back on the food rations. Shinhao accused Duji of deliberately skimming funds for personal gain. Duji, however, claimed her mother-in-law was hoarding the household's assets. The resources at her disposal were simply insufficient to sustain such an extravagant household. When Yunji told me this, I wasn't the least bit surprised. It had been a year and a half. The shops I painstakingly built up must have been squandered by Duji by now. Having driven me away and given birth to a son, she naturally no longer needed to grovel for everyone's favor, especially Shinhao's. She was likely scheming to secure the position of crown prince for her own son. Shinhao is nearly 16 and no fool. Naturally, he's been clashing with her every step of the way. I have no time to watch that family's spectacle. After spring arrives, I'll enter the academy and become the first female instructor at the inaugural girls' school. But after winter began, The Princess Regent summoned me specifically to discuss matters concerning the Marquis' household. The Imperial Astronomical Bureau has declared that heavy snow will fall in the south this year, urging the court to prepare early. Today in court, Shen Huaishi volunteered to take full responsibility for this matter. Miaoi, what are your thoughts? The princess has always valued me. Her question made her meaning clear. Fortune and misfortune are intertwined. Should heavy snowfall truly strike the south, it would present both a challenge and an opportunity. If Shen Huaishi seizes this chance, he will ascend to new heights, but as a woman herself, the Princess Dowager understands me. My sacrifices, my grievances, my resentment. She was hinting that if I refuse, she need not grant Shen Huaishi this opportunity. Indeed, in my previous life, during the southern snow disaster, Shen Huaishi conceived what others could not. Before imperial funds arrived, he used the family's private silver to promptly deliver vast quantities of winter supplies, drastically reducing casualties. For this great merit, the following year His Majesty exceptionally promoted him to Minister of Works. He became the youngest minister since the founding of the dynasty. In my previous life, to raise that silver, I nearly sold off my entire dowry. It was after this incident that my private assets became the property of the Marquis' household, leaving me with no leverage. This life, without me, without my dowry, I cannot be certain what Shen Huaishi would do, but regardless, the lives and livelihoods of the people are of paramount importance. They should not be entangled with my personal desires. Therefore, I knelt before the princess with gratitude. Imperial affairs take precedence. Your Highness need not consider Miaoi. Select the most suitable candidate. Ultimately, the court entrusted this matter to Shen Huaishi, yet this life's outcome differed from the last. Shen Huaishi's decision, however, mirrored the previous one. Whether for his career or for the people, he made a bold gamble. Before the snow disaster truly struck, he used private funds from the household to stockpile vast quantities of winter supplies and dispatch them southward. The Marquis' residence held no dowry of mine, yet it still contained the private savings my mother-in-law had stashed away. She merely disliked me. She always trusted and obeyed this son of hers. Thus, at first, I believed he would follow the same path as in my previous life, advancing in rank and receiving honors, but in this lifetime there was also Dushi. Shen Huaishi, swayed by his wife's whispers, appointed a servant from Dushi's entourage. This servant appeared loyal and trustworthy, yet harbored treacherous intentions. He staged the illusion of transporting supplies southward while secretly absconding with the funds. When imperial silver arrived, Shen Huaishi, just as in his previous life, remained confident the supplies had reached their destination and did not use the funds for procurement. Only when the southern region's bone-chilling snow and ice drenched him did the truth dawn. He had taken the imperial funds but failed to deliver. Countless lives were lost in the snow disaster. His Majesty was furious. On his first day back in the capital, Shen Huaishi was stripped of his title and dismissed from office. Had it not been for several veteran ministers pleading his case, he would have been imprisoned immediately. It was said that during that bitter winter, the Marquis' residents endured extreme hardship. They couldn't even afford coal. The old lady had diverted every last coin to cover expenses, hoping to spare Shen Huaishi from imprisonment. I next encountered Shen Huaishi before the princess's residence. I assumed he sought the princess's intercession, yet he blocked my palanquin instead. Master Hung, would you honor me by accepting tea? I always concealed my face in public, and he had never attended my lectures. He had no idea Master Hung was me. I didn't want to acknowledge him. He followed step by step. Master Hung enjoys the princess's favor. Could you speak well of Shen before her? Shen would surely. I halted my steps, lifted my veil, gazed upon him. Shen Huaishi's face turned ashen in an instant. He stared at me in disbelief. You. Master Heng is actually you? Shen Huaishi walked away, utterly distraught. His face was dull and lifeless as he left, muttering, how could this be? 14 years of marriage. He likely no longer remembered my appearance from back then. Alas, his disoriented state lasted but a few hours. By evening, he came seeking me at home once more. Miaoi, since you are Master Heng, matters become far simpler. Unlike the dullness of morning, his eyes were now dark and bright. If only you would plead with the princess, asking her to speak on my behalf before His Majesty. Miaoi, if you help me through this crisis, you'll remain the Marquis of our household. From now on, we'll be devoted and loving, living in perfect harmony, never parted again. I stared at him coldly, sneering. Shen Huaishi, am I a masochist? Shen Huaishi froze. Is your Marquis' position gold-plated? Shen Huaishi's lips trembled. Where's your dignity, your pride? Who gave you the nerve to speak to me like this? Shen Huaishi suddenly erupted in fury. Chui Miaoi, do you think I did this for myself? I lost my title, my position. Do you think I'm the one suffering? It's your son who's ruined. My son? I laughed again. Does he even share my surname? You, Miaoi. Shen Huaishi's tone softened. Miaoi, we've been husband and wife for over a decade. You know this wasn't my fault. I did procure supplies. I even used my personal assets to cover the costs up front. I simply misjudged the man. How can you place all the blame on me? Young Master Shen, you needn't say these things to me. Go Report them to His Majesty. His Majesty will decide the outcome. I had no desire to argue further. I shook off his hand. At the doorway, I turned back. Shinhuaiji. Failing to recognize true character is also a crime. In my past life, I bore that punishment. This life, it's his turn. Shinhuaiji was ultimately imprisoned. So many perished in the snow disaster, the people demanded answers. Before the verdict fell, my mother-in-law came begging. Shin Hao came begging. Every single person in the Marquis' household who'd ever been remotely friendly to me came begging. I refused to see any of them. They shouted outside the door. Marquis lady! You've managed this household for over a decade, you can't just abandon it now. I had Yunji enlarge the divorce decree. Make a rubbing of it. And mount it on the door. They persisted. Even if divorced, he remains the children's father. I then had a copy of the official wanted notice for Shinhuaiji rubbed onto paper and posted it on the door. They still protested. After over a decade as husband and wife. Are you truly so heartless? I had them all driven away and moved to the princess's residence. A month later, Shinhuaji's verdict was delivered. His Majesty, considering his ancestors' meritorious service to the state and acknowledging he had indeed been framed, stripped him of his title, dismissed him from office, and sentenced him to 2 years imprisonment. Finally, no one came looking for me anymore. Overnight, the tree fell and the monkeys scattered. The loyal and valiant Marquis' household, both people and wealth, vanished completely. Only then did word spread that Dushi had fled with the child long before. I sat in the tea house, listening to gossip for half the afternoon. Some claimed Dushi had absconded with the last of the estate's wealth. Others insisted the servant had been deliberately planted by Dushi to steal the Marquis' silver. There were even whispers that Dushi had long been intimate with that servant. That the Marquis of Loyal Valor had been cuckolded beyond measure. With so many conflicting tales, Yunji couldn't make heads or tails of it. But I eventually learned the truth. It was a year later. Dushi and that servant were arrested by the imperial authorities, along with the child. They say that as they were being led into the prison, they passed by Shinhuaiji's cell. At just one glance, Shinhuaiji went mad, screaming like a man possessed. I rushed straight to the tea house to hear the gossip. I didn't get any juicy details, but I did run into Dushi's ex-husband, who'd also rushed there for the latest scoop. Who knew you shared this hobby, sir? By then, my reputation had spread throughout the capital, and everyone addressed me respectfully as sir. Why not let me tell you the story? It turns out he divorced Dushi back then not because she neglected her maternal relatives. She broke off her engagement to the loyal and valiant Marquis' household because she feared Shinhuaiji wouldn't enter officialdom either. Spending his days at home, that would interfere with her affair with her lover. I was stationed at the border at the time, returning home only once every half year or so, perfect for her purposes. To be honest, it's shameful to be cuckolded by a mere servant. I couldn't bear the disgrace, so I concocted a false excuse. Did Shinhuaiji never suspect anything? She was with him for 10 years without bearing him a child? How could she dare? If the child resembled her lover, the truth would be exposed. Those two truly had a love as strong as gold. I discovered them back then precisely because they tried to poison me with a barrenness potion. So that's how it was. No wonder I couldn't conceive again after giving birth to Shinhao. No wonder even Dushi's family disowned her. What a pair of childhood sweethearts. What a heavenly moon. A cloud-dusted snow. After returning home, I couldn't help but laugh. Laughed until tears streamed down my face. He deceived me for over a decade. And Dushi deceived him for over a decade. What goes around comes around. Serves them right. They say Shinhuaiji has gone mad. In the imperial prison, he neither eats nor drinks, weeping and laughing uncontrollably. His mother-in-law, or rather, Lady Sue fell ill soon after. Her attendant came to see me many times, saying she wished to speak with me. I ignored her each time. Until one snowy night. The attendant said she wouldn't survive the night. When I arrived, she lay on the bed, her breath faint as a thread, looking exactly like I did the year I passed away. Do you remember the year of my 50th birthday? You invited chefs from all over, prepared 99 tables, 99 dishes. So many people gathered around me. They said I would surely live forever, that the Marquisite's future was boundless. And that year, that New Year's, you somehow procured so many fireworks. She rambled on, recounting the splendor of the Marquis's household in those days. Finally, her cloudy eyes fixed steadily on me. Chui, it is my Marquis's household that has wronged you. The Marquis's household is long gone, I said. The light in Sue's eyes vanished abruptly, and tears fell. Madame Shin. I looked at her now skin and bones form. I lost my mother at 10. From the day I entered the Marquis's residence. I treated you as my own mother. What did I ever do to displease you? That you nitpicked at me endlessly. In my past life, I was possessed by a demonic obsession to earn your approval. I gave everything I could, yet you were never satisfied. Only after starting over did I understand. My worth doesn't depend on others' approval. Madame Sue looked at me. Her usually sharp face was blank. After a long moment, she stammered. But I went through the same thing. Another year passed, and Shin Huaiji was released from prison. I never saw him in the capital. Only heard that Du Ji, who'd been beheaded a year prior, had his grave desecrated. Time passed swiftly. Over 2 years. The academy's student body swelled. Besides me, another woman from a scholarly family defied her clan's opposition to join as a teacher. With the children, days were always bright and joyful. These past few days, someone has been following me to and from the school. It was Shin Hao. Except for that one time he came to see me when Shin Huaiji was imprisoned. I hadn't seen him in a very long time. He had grown much taller, dressed in plain cloth garments. He was so thin he was almost unrecognizable from his former self. Knowing I wouldn't acknowledge him, he didn't approach. After Lady Sue passed, the only remaining attendant, the matron, also left. The Ho family's assets had long been depleted, leaving him with little wealth. I knew he'd sought work everywhere. Physical labor? He couldn't handle it. Selling his knowledge? He had none. Selling his favors? Within days, he'd offend the customers and end up paying them back. Now he ekes out a living selling calligraphy and paintings, relying on the skill I once forced him to master. Noticing my gaze fixed on him today, he took a few steps forward. Mother. His voice broke before the word was out. I turned my face away. He halted. I started to walk away. I'm sorry. That year, his voice was as thin as a mosquito's buzz. She said you ignored me for months. That it was all just a game to you. I didn't know it would turn out that way. In his past life, he clearly wasn't unaware. This life, he's a few years younger. But whether it's him or not, I don't care anymore. I turned back and took out the silver I'd prepared long ago. Here are 300 taels of silver. Enough for an ordinary family to live on for 3 years. I looked up at him. You have 3 choices. At 20, enter the imperial examinations. Those who pass and become jinsher are not few. At 20, master a skill. Those who support their families with it are everywhere. At 20, end up on the streets, living out the rest of their days there. Such also exist. Of course, you could also live for today. Drink today's wine. Be carefree for 3 days. And then return the way you came. All choices rest with you. Just know this, life offers no second chances. I placed the silver in his hand and turned to leave. My part was done. Whatever path he chose, it was no longer my concern. The sun shone brilliantly that day. As I entered the schoolhouse, a child drying books came running up. "Master!" She clung to my leg. "That man earlier. They said. He's your son, right?" I took her hand. "Yes." "Then why didn't you help him?" He looked so pitiful. "What does help mean? Like, hug him? Comfort him? Teach him? Like we do? He's grown up now. He doesn't need it." But 1, 2, 3 of them all come begging me to help them. To the book, that's not right. Then why do all books say it like that? Because. I crouched down and ruffled the little girl's hair. Those books were written by men, fathers, husbands, sons. Then will there be books written by women someday? Yes. That's why we are here, right? The end.